Coming up in this video, first off, welcome. Welcome to Zen Rose Garden behind the scenes. Coming up in this video, mediumship definition. This is part of our mediumship development training.
Join us for some behind the scenes talk on topics we go on about when we don't have adult supervision.
If you are just getting to know us.
I'm Heather.
And I'm David
from
ZenRoseGarden.com.
If you are a healing arts professional.
Or you want to be.
We want to know about it. So put a
Yes.
hashtag HealingPro in the comments and let us know what you do.
Absolutely, or what you want to do.
We've done a few videos on our channel about defining mediumship, but we always like to look for new ways to let you know what mediumship is about, because we kind of have the public civilians, as we call them, kind of have a sometimes a narrow perspective of what mediumship is. How do you experience what you would call mediumship for yourself?
Yes.
Have you experienced mediumship yourself, or have you ever had a mediumship reading? How have you experienced what we call mediumship? Okay.
And Jolie says, I see spirit, but I don't get messages.
Okay. Most people think mediumship looks like traditional spiritualist mediumship message delivery, but that is only one way.
And that was a mouthful.
Okay.
There are so many different ways that mediums use their ability.
And I want to talk about that today, because we're talking about it after this morning's live on mediumship circles.
And we're kind of redefining mediumship from the general context into some more behind the scenes elements.
Right, because I think a lot of people don't use mediumship in the really expansive way it could be used. So some may not even consider themselves mediums by the general sense of the civilian terminology in traditional sense, but are still using mediumship.
So let's get into the definition. So first, mediumship defined is simply the process of receiving information from this realm of invisible reality. We're going to explain what that means in just a minute.
So before we get to the spirit world or heaven or the afterlife where grandma lives, let's just call it the invisible reality, from sort of a non-descriptive, generic, but not really. So you can call it the spirit world.
Absolutely. You can call it the afterlife. You can call it another dimension. But all of that falls under the category of what we like to call invisible reality from a parapsychology perspective.
Right, because it's all something that we feel, we sense, we tap into, we get messages from, we connect with, but we all have a different way to describe it. In other words, we as a human people group, like all the human peoples as a
whole unit,
don't see it all the time. Like you can see the sky and we can generally come to a agreement about what the sky looks like.
What color it is. The same thing with the mountains, for example.
But like with invisible reality, so general umbrella term for the spirit world, as we're going to talk about it, it has to be tuned into. You have to take yourself out of the realm of apparent reality and get into invisible reality. Okay,
right? Absolutely. So without descriptives, like heaven, limbo, alternate dimensions, and such like that, mediumship is information that comes to us from that invisible reality, from a disembodied energy of some kind. Just getting a little bit more parapsychology technical up in here.
So, for example, you have psychic information, which is from person to person, a living person to a different person, to another living person. And then you got mediumship information, which is technically psychic information from a living person to a person without a body, or
a disembodied energy. Right.
But it's still psychic to psychic.
Yes.
But mediumship involves someone without a physical body.
Right. And this could be grandma or something else, some higher energy.
Angels, God, whatever.
It's really, really, really hard to define, even if we want to, because it is a subjective reality. You've got an objective reality like the sky that we can all kind of agree on is mostly blue, sometimes beautiful during the sunset or sunrise with multicolors.
It's pretty hard to define, but what we're talking about is subjective reality. This is where people start to mince definitions and argue. And really there's no real reason to argue about it,
No,
because
please.
we all see it the way we see it. So
Please don't argue. Find common ground, find commonalities. And then Blazing Turtle says, I feel like my mediumship abilities only kick in when someone is in front of me in need of something. I don't always give them a message, but I feel like they were brought to me for healing. Absolutely. And does that make sense? Yes, absolutely. Usually people say they feel better when they leave me, and I don't even do or say much, but I feel like something has changed.
So that's how your mediumship shows up. So your mediumship ability may be more in the realm of healing mediumship,
right?
Which is not necessarily giving somebody a message from grandma in the spiritualist tradition of platform mediumship.
So it's not necessarily the big show of message mediumship that so many people are familiar with, but it's still a message from spirit. Or an experience from spirit.
It's a healing experience from spirit. So in the tradition of laying on of the hands in many spiritual traditions, that is, for example, still a part of mediumship, because there's a connection being made consciously or non-consciously from the other side, from invisible reality, whatever label you want to put on it, brought in for a higher purpose, for healing, for furthering of our experience on earth from the other side.
There aren't a lot of messages that are delivered, but there is a tremendous amount of healing that takes place from spirit to human reality.
Well, in legend, who would be the most healing medium of all time? Maybe the Jesus guy, right?
Jesus Christo.
Jesus would be considered a healing medium. I thought I would give you guys kind of an experience that we had this week with one of our students. She's attended all of our workshops through the years on mediumship and really trained herself in the techniques of mediumship. But she got to a point where she's like, I learned it all. I think it's great. It's amazing. It's really helped me. But I feel like I don't really, being a medium isn't really my thing. But I'm glad for the experience. But she didn't realize how she actually used it. And then she started doing recordings. She works for National Day Calendar. And there's a radio show that they have coming out. Each episode of the radio show is about an unsung hero that is passed on to the other side, that maybe did something great that wasn't like the Neil Armstrong or somebody you've heard of, but somebody that made a big difference behind the scenes.
That you haven't heard of.
So she started doing the recordings of it, and she oh my gosh, this is how I use my mediumship. Read me what she wrote, and she said, I can't believe it. I wanted to connect to this person who's passed away, and I connected, and I wrote this. Tell me what you think.
Just channeled it.
And I went, she's like, I feel like I was tapping into this person, and I was writing their story like they wanted it to be told. She said, and then I went to the recording studio. I laid the tracks, told the story, narrated it for the radio show, and the recording engineer was like in tears from this huge thing. And she's like, I wanted to let you guys know that's my special spice.
That's how it shows up for me.
That's how the connection works.
And then Abigail says, I always wished that I was. I've been told I was empathic and highly sensitive, but I just don't know. Abigail, it takes some practice, and it takes some really good education under your belt to kind of understand what it is that you're actually experiencing already. She says, I feel like my mind always takes over. That would be another thing. And my biggest suggestion for you is to understand and learn what your baseline energy is, what your baseline emotions are. When those emotions start shifting, then most likely it's not going to be your emotion that you're experiencing. You may be just channeling somebody else's emotion. And here's the thing, is that emotions are fastest methods of delivery. Okay, it is much easier to explain a story through emotion than it is to slow it down into human words. Okay? So
I think a lot of, experiences of unfolding as a medium is to figure out what your special spice is. And when you go into a learning mediumship with the idea that you're going to be this way and that way, you start to put parameters on it, you kind of unfold in a really awkward way, because that might not be your predisposition. Like what you're actually supposed to become as a medium might look very different from what you think it looks like. So a lot of civilians, I'm going to do this quotes, who watch mediumship on Facebook Lives or on TV. Platforms or TV. That's only one way of hundreds of ways that people, mediums, use their mediumship. Like our friend Anna uses her mediumship in such an incredible way. That
to channel these people's message that don't have a body anymore. And she's literally taking their message, embodying it, and bringing it out in voice, in word, in phrase.
Well, and telling a story that the radio show is very inspirational.
Yes.
About people behind the scenes that used their
Special
special
spice.
abilities to be heroes that we've never heard about.
Right.
You know, the back end people that made a change that we
Mhm.
don't know about. It's like the people in front get the big kudos, but the people behind the scenes who were the heroes that made it happen sometimes don't get their stories told. So that's what the radio show is about. And it's like
they may not be singing.
right. So that's a really incredible
unsung.
Stories to tell. So
Yes.
as she was starting to tap into these energies and these people on the other side, after kind of studying what am I going to talk about, and then
Mhm.
kind of tapping in and reading it, she could feel them coming through as she was writing the stories.
Right.
Well, when the radio show comes out, nobody that's listening to it is going to know that she used her mediumship to channel these energies and to give her stories an extra special emotion.
What they will know is the emotion conveyed and experienced by the receiver.
And that's one of the ways we talk about in mediumship, how if you let your ego get out of the way, how you get to the point where you don't need the credit for it,
Right.
you can receive the credit and the joy from it by seeing what that end product brings for other people. And for
Right.
her, that's kind of like her end product is the
Mhm.
joy of bringing those stories to the world. She doesn't need to say, oh, I channeled this as the
Mhm.
great medium that tapped into these people's stories.
No.
Because what's important is her art, her craft at the end of the
Yes.
day. And I think so many people's mediumship can show up this way. And so
Yes.
if we try to put ourselves in a box with our mediumship, we're really not taking the time to go on the adventure of
Mhm.
what is our scope? What is
And
our
we're
special
limiting.
spice? We're
Right.
limiting ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. So Spiritual Energy says, mental mediumship is my platform, but as you know, it sometimes can come through all senses,
Yes.
empathy, feelings such as the clairsenses. It depends on the person and the persons that I read.
Yes.
Absolutely. So a part of that is being the receiver and delivering the message, right? And then the other part is based on the recipients in the room or in the proximity, wherever that message is being delivered to, that message can come across in the method of the receiver.
Right, because you've always got three people in the energy of a
Yes.
reading. If you're doing more traditional message mediumship or
Oh.
anything like that, you've got three people at least in the
Yes.
situation. You've got yourself as the medium, you've got the client who's in front of you, and then you've got the person in spirit. The only constant is you.
Mhm.
Of course, you've got your guides, but
Right.
I'm kind of counting them as you too. So you've got these two wild cards that are
Mhm.
always going to feel different, show up different, that are going to awaken different senses in you. So when you feel the empathy and the stuff in your body, that's physical mediumship.
Yeah,
right?
it really
It's
is. Yeah.
physical energy activating.
If you take away the names and the categories and the boxes that you put things in, and you just use whatever simple words to describe things, you're going to find that you open up much more than people who need all of these definitions and need to fit into a particular box.
Well, like I say about, with our students that we train over the year, past 11, I can't believe we're on 11 years.
11 years.
The 30th will be our 11-year anniversary
Yeah.
with doing what we do together. And what I really like to do is eliminate the
Boxes.
Mhm. Because you are a whole person with a whole sensory instrument that most mediums and sensitives are not fully using.
Right.
Because I think when you're training, it's good to learn about these things separately.
Learn about the boxes when you're training, and then let go of the boxes when you're practicing.
And then let the boxes integrate,
Yes.
because there are no boxes in reality. It's only theory that you're learning. Physical mediumship, mental mediumship, external, physical, internal.
Right.
So there's a lot but it's great to learn those theories.
So that you know better definitions.
What
It's
happens-
not about putting yourself in the box.
Right. But what happens is they integrate in your subconscious.
Mhm. And then you have a broader spectrum of information to pull from.
So we've covered a different experience in mediumship because we do want to kind of let our students know, because we find that people that come to us want to learn a little bit more of a broader spectrum.
Expand a little more.
Like,
Right.
how can I have these sensitivities, but what does it look like for me in my life?
So
right?
your connection is strengthened. Okay. Even though that you might be using it in a way that you think it looks different than other people, it's really exciting because there are so many different ways to work mediumship into your daily life. And Ginger says, I hear and see messages, then my clairsentience confirms that it's spirit. Does that make sense? It absolutely makes sense.
That's kind of the way I pick it up. in general, but not always, but in general, me, like in a perfect world, that's how I do it.
And then Heather says, during a meditation, I all of a sudden felt this huge presence in front of me and it felt like I was falling. What exactly is that?
I kind of have an idea what that is. So when you're shifting brain states, especially when you're shifting brain states in a really dramatic way, it can feel like a falling sensation, and you can feel that sensation sometimes when you're waking up or going to sleep. When you're shifting brain states, it can feel like a falling sensation.
Yeah. So that's the falling sensation. The huge presence may be that you have stepped into the essence of maybe a spirit guide or something like that. Whatever context, whether it's guardian angel, whether it's archangel, whatever essence or energy that is for you, that huge presence is kind of also tapping you into what you are capable of. Okay, so that presence shows you the extent of your magnificent energy.
Sometimes Heather, I love it. Sometimes Heather. I feel like we should blow high school later.
It's the
together.
Heathers.
So I never saw the remake of Heathers. I want to make sure. I saw the original with Christian Slater and Winona Ryder. Yes. So I think sometimes when we have experiences during a meditation or a pivotal experience, we can get slammed into the awareness of that experience really fast sometimes as sort of a shock to our system. So those experiences aren't continual all the time, but it's sort of like that wake up moment where we're like slammed into the awareness. We're like, oh, okay, see how it works.
It's not necessarily sustainable, though they are huge experiences. And most of those times I find that those are like key markers in your evolution, in your development, in your spiritual ascension.
I've had a few of those, Heather. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I think that is to give us the awareness that there are these shifting brain states, these shifting
and these big energies.
And it is within that brain state from beta to alpha and deeper that's the space where you tap into.
Here's another thing brain-wise is that when you are shifting states like that, okay, the subconscious uses your senses in a different way than your conscious waking mind does. So your subconscious and the shifts in between those can be very shocking or very jarring because your subconscious does not limit itself to time or space. So as you're making that handover, that switch over between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, you can have this abrupt shift into a different use of your senses or processing of your sensory input. So this feeling, we're talking about, we just talked about the live earlier, how we have at least 40 different senses. That was in Scientific America, at least 40 different senses that they have documented, including elevation and the passage of your body in space-time. So speed, for example.
And so really the main space where we perceive of time as linear is the beta state of consciousness, which
is our conscious waking mind,
which is where we are right now. Yes. But even with the beta state of consciousness, you can slip between the alpha and the beta. Like when you're in the middle of the flow and you start to channel, there's this like really smooth place where it sneaks into there where you lose track of time.
It's what we call the in-between.
Right. And so once you cross into the alpha, which they kind of converge together, which is the goal of your medium psychics and intuitives, to find a comfortable place for where those brain states converge.
So which is also called sitting in the power.
Right. You can toggle back and forth with ease. And that's the whole purpose of training your mediumship.
Yeah.
But once you get into the alpha and deeper states, the sense of time is not there.
Right.
Which doesn't
also
exist.
Why in the state of hypnosis, for example, the passage of time is different.
Right.
Same thing with sleeping. The passage of time is different. You can go on an entire 5-year journey in your sleep and maybe you slept an hour and a half.
So that's one of the magic things that happens.
Yes. So we want to know, now that we have covered a few different experiences, how would you use mediumship and how do you think you're doing it already? Okay. Where in your life do you already use mediumship? Okay, keep in mind, mediumship is the translation or transmission from spirit energy to physical form.
And honestly, I think, someone that has a religious practice or spiritual practice that has a faith-based experience in their life, that has a regular prayer practice, is going to experience mediumship, although they don't necessarily call it that.
Yeah.
Like they say a prayer and they get an answer to that prayer in their heart.
Revelation.
Right. And like a little child can be like, I feel like I should do this. I feel like God told me this, or, whatever your religious construct is, that at its basis, primal, simplest form is mediumship.
Yes.
Right.
Heather says, that is so awesome. Thank you so much. I had talked to my teacher about it and he was kind of pissed and never really helped me with what I experienced. So I appreciate your help so much.
I think there's not enough grounded information out there because years and years, I've studied this kind of stuff since I was a little girl from having gifts.
I've studied it since she was a little girl.
Yeah, but no, because you weren't alive when I was little.
I didn't say from this body.
I'm older than he is.
You can call it what you want to call it.
I'm not a fucking alcoholic.
No.
But I do enjoy a glass of nice Bordeaux. Having come from a tradition of, studying and learning, I think that we need to take out the ego out of the training.
Please.
Because I see a lot of teachers and put the ego in the training or
get caught up in the right versus wrong, me versus you element, which sucks.
No, also here's the thing I see happening is some teachers will not admit that they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a perpetual student my whole life and I'm always learning something new. And so when you confront a teacher sometimes with something they don't know, they a lot of times will say, and this goes for teachers in all disciplines, not just mediumship. They'll be like, oh, they'll get pissed off at you instead of, I'm not really totally sure. I feel like I've learned that before. Let me research that answer for you and give you something tangible.
And that would be our response to it. If we don't know something, it's like, and that's why when somebody tells me something special about where they live or about something about their environment, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Because I will literally go and research it. And I do that with everything across the board. Heather does as well. So when we don't know something, I'm like, you know what? I honestly don't know that yet, but I'll get back to you. As opposed to somebody who is basically vomiting their insecurity on you and getting pissed off because you're asking a question. Their primal mind is, I don't know. Oh no, I'm not the teacher. I'm not going to be good enough. You're going to reject me. I don't know as much. So instead they put on this front of defense.
Well,
what's that going to do?
I sometimes don't know things that I already know.
Guilty as charged.
Sometimes I'll say something like, oh yeah, the other day, I think a couple of days ago I said on the live, oh yeah, Metatron is actually Ezekiel from the Bible, but what I meant to say was he's Enoch. So like I know shit and like sometimes I'll totally transpose.
I will verify.
It's Gemini and sometimes so it's like I think one of the greatest gifts you can have as a human is kind of be humility. Like, you know what? I totally kind of forgot what that word means.
Or I fucked it up and I completely gave you the wrong information. I will own that so many times. It is ridiculous. I mean, most of my information is pretty spot on. But if there's something where I completely give you the wrong information, I will follow it up with, you know what? I completely fucked that up. Let me make it right. That's just how I roll.
Well, because you have to be human. I think the number one thing is to stay curious. It's like Albert Einstein said, I'm not any kind of special genius, which we all know he is. Stop it.
I'm just childlike curious.
He said, I'm just really, really curious. But I think that is the root of discovering all of our genius is to just be curious about your world and continue to be curious.
And spiritual energy says, yes, that is what some ego people teachers do. I saw a spirit from 12 years old, but shut off to fear. As I grew, lessons, loss, hurt, etc., it opened right up and I began helping thousands of people.
Yes,
absolutely. And that's how it goes. If you like this video, hit that like button 5 times.
And if you have any insider stuff you want to know, let us know in the comments.
And for more live hangouts, behind the scenes secrets, and mind hacking pro tips,
be sure to subscribe
and click that bell, whether it's over here or whether it's over here. I don't know yet.
He's got to decide at one point
to turn notifications on,
so you're the first to know
when we drop a new video
or go live.
And we know that time is a valuable and precious resource, and the fact that you guys have chosen to spend that with us, we absolutely honor and appreciate that. But most importantly, that you are here to level up your skills, take your life and your business to a completely new level. We honor that even more. Thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you on the next video.
See you in the next video, or in the astral realm.
In the astral.
Starseed.
Boom, boom.
Good night, guys.